Some killers don't wait for you to break the rules. They break them first. Most people believe death follows a pattern, a reason, a warning, a face you can avoid if you stay on the right streets, keep the right friends, pray at the right times. But the truth is darker than that. Sometimes death isn't a man. Sometimes it isn't a spirit. Sometimes it isn't even alive the way we understand life. Sometimes death is just patient, watching, choosing, picking the moment when you feel safest, and stepping into your world like it never left. I've seen killers who come back from places nobody returns from. I've seen shadows that move only when your eyes aren't looking. I've seen houses that hold old things that breathe under the floorboards, waiting for the next person born with the wrong blood. And tonight, I'm going to tell you about 3 of them. 3 encounters that should have never happened. 3 killers that don't follow any laws. Not life's laws, not death's laws, not the natural order that keeps this world from collapsing into the dark behind it. These stories don't take place in abandoned woods or ghost towns people forgot. No, they happen in the same streets you drive through every day. Atlanta, Decatur, East Point, blocks where kids still play outside, where neighbors still wave, where life feels normal until you look too long into a shadow that shouldn't be there. What you're about to hear isn't legend. It isn't superstition. It isn't a story someone brought back from a campfire. These were real encounters, with real killers, who were never supposed to meet each other, never supposed to cross each other's paths, never supposed to see the same soul at the same time. But when rules break, when the wrong doors open, when fear answers questions it should have ignored, they find each other, and they find you. So listen carefully, not because you're curious, but because the ones who don't listen are always the first ones followed. And tonight, I'll show you what happens when 3 killers break every rule at once. Now, let's begin. I learned a long time ago that silence can be louder than a scream. That's something folks on the south side of Atlanta understand without needing to say it out loud. Some nights, the air gets so still it feels like the city itself is holding its breath. The streetlights hum, pretending they're strong enough to push back the dark, and everybody moves like they've got somewhere urgent to be, even when they don't. Because if you linger too long in the wrong place, something might notice you. Something that shouldn't. That's how things were on the stretch of Boulder Park Drive where Jamal lived. It wasn't the worst part of the city, but it was the kind of neighborhood where people didn't hang around outside after midnight unless they had to. Folks knew better. There were rules. Rules nobody wrote down, rules nobody taught you, but you learned them anyway. And the most important one was simple. Once danger passes you by, don't go looking for it. And it sure as hell doesn't come looking for you twice. That rule kept generations alive. Until the night it didn't. It started on a Wednesday. Nothing special, nothing strange. Just one of those long, dragging days where the sky stayed gray from morning to night. The kind of day that made people quiet. Jamal had just finished his shift at the warehouse off Cascade. He worked late often, walking home because his car had been sitting in a mechanic's lot for 2 months longer than promised. He was young, 19, still holding on to the last pieces of childhood, but already carrying the weight of adulthood on his shoulders. He moved like someone who didn't want trouble, but knew how to handle it if it came his way. The walk from Cascade to Boulder Park wasn't long. 7 minutes if you moved fast, 10 if you didn't. But at night, it felt like half an hour of walking through a throat that kept tightening around you. There was an abandoned house on the corner, a sagging, boarded-up thing with peeling paint and windows that looked like sockets where eyes had been ripped out. Kids dared each other to touch the porch, then ran off screaming. Grown folks didn't even look in its direction. You could feel something wrong in the air around that house. Like the darkness, there had a weight to it. Jamal usually cut down the opposite side of the street. But that night he was tired, too tired to care. He shifted his backpack on his shoulder and headed straight down the sidewalk that passed the abandoned home. His steps were steady, but his mind wasn't. There was that feeling again, the one he'd had for 3 nights straight. The feeling of being watched. He tried to shake it off, blaming it on exhaustion, but the sensation clung to him the way humidity clings to skin. Heavy, close, unwanted. As he approached the house, he noticed something off. Someone elderly was standing across the street, just beyond the glow of a flickering streetlight. Miss Alberta. Everybody knew her. The old woman who watched the neighborhood from her porch like it was her personal kingdom. She had seen more than anyone else on that block, and there wasn't a soul in Atlanta who didn't respect her. But tonight, she wasn't on her porch. She was standing on the sidewalk, staring at the abandoned house with her lips pressed tight and her eyes wide with something close to fear. Jamal slowed down. She didn't look at him at first, didn't blink, didn't breathe. She just kept staring at that house like she was waiting for something to come out of it. When her voice finally rose, it was thin, cracking under the weight of something she refused to name. "Boy," she whispered, "don't walk this way tonight." Jamal frowned. "Why not?" She shook her head sharply, like she didn't want to explain, or couldn't. "Just go around the long way." He almost laughed. The long way added 8 extra minutes. He was worn out, bones aching, legs heavy. "It's fine, Miss Alberta. It's just a house." She finally turned to him, and the look she gave him shut down every argument he had ready. "It ain't the house," she said. "It's what's inside it." He wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her eyes stopped him. She looked like someone who'd seen something and hadn't slept since. Something she wished she could forget. He nodded slowly and stepped past her, intending to take her advice. But when he turned the corner to head down the safer route, he froze. A sound drifted from behind him, soft, like someone dragging fingers down old wood. It came from the abandoned house. Jamal turned his head. A shape moved in the front window. Just a flicker, just a shadow, but enough to make the hair on his arm stand straight up. It could have been a trick of the light. It could have been nothing. But something inside him tightened, like a cold hand gripping his stomach from the inside. He should have kept walking. Should have taken the long route. Should have listened. But Jamal was 19. 19-year-olds are stubborn, curious, unafraid of things they don't understand. He took a step toward the house. The streetlight buzzed loudly, flickered twice, then died. Darkness swallowed the block. Someone whispered his name. Not loud, not aggressive, soft, curious, like someone testing how it fell on their tongue. Jamal. His breath hitched. He hadn't told anyone he was coming home late. Nobody knew his route. Nobody should have known he would be there at that exact moment. He spun around, scanning the street. It was empty, dead still. The houses slept. Cars sat unmoving. Even the wind held its breath. Jamal. This time, the voice came from behind him, from the direction of the house. He didn't want to look. Every part of him screamed not to. But fear has a strange pull. It turns your head before your mind agrees. It forces your eyes open, even when you want them closed. He turned. The window was empty again. No shape, no movement, no shadow, just a dark square of nothing. Jamal backed away slowly. His shoes scraped the pavement, the only sound for several seconds. When he reached the corner, he felt Miss Alberta's presence behind him. He didn't need to look to know she'd followed him. "I told you," she whispered. "Don't walk this way tonight." He swallowed hard. "Who said my name?" She didn't answer. Instead, she took his hand in hers. Her palm was cold and trembling. "You listen to me now," she said. "Whatever you heard, that thing don't forget people. And it don't leave them alone either." Jamal stared at her. "What thing?" he asked quietly. Her voice dropped lower, like she was scared it might hear her. "The one who came back." And then she did something he had never seen her do, not once in his entire life. Miss Alberta stepped away from him, crossed herself, and hurried up the street without looking back. Jamal stood alone in the dark, the silent blocks stretching out around him, the old house watching him with those hollow, empty windows. He felt a chill slide down his spine, slow as ice melting down warm skin. For the first time in his life, he felt like the night was breathing, and it was breathing his name. Jamal didn't sleep that night. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the small creaks and sighs of the old house settling around him. Every sound felt too sharp, too close. His mind replayed the whisper again and again, the way it stretched his name like it already belonged to him. He tried to tell himself it was nothing, a trick of the wind, his imagination, maybe someone messing around. But the fear didn't fade. It sat heavy in the room, pressing against him like a weight on his chest. He kept thinking about the abandoned house, about the shape he thought he saw in the window, about the cold grip of Miss Alberta's trembling hand. She never trembled, not once. Not even during the summer the police found a man hiding under her porch. Not even when kids fired off illegal fireworks right outside her yard. Her hands were steady, always. But not tonight. His phone buzzed beside him. He flinched and grabbed it. It was a message from his mom. "You home?" He stared at the screen for a moment before typing back. "Yeah." He didn't tell her what happened. She worked long hours at the hospital, barely sleeping enough as it was. The last thing she needed was to worry about shadows and windows and voices in the dark. But even as he set the phone down, he felt something shift in the hallway outside his door. A soft thump, then silence. He turned his head slowly. Another thump, this one closer. He sat up, heart pounding, listening. The house grew still again. Too still. It wasn't the kind of quiet that felt peaceful. It was the kind that waited, the kind that held something inside it. He slid out of bed and walked to the door. When he opened it, the hallway stretched ahead, dim and empty. But the air felt wrong. Heavy, damp, like breath left behind by someone who wasn't supposed to be there. He stepped out. The floorboards creaked under his feet. He paused, waiting for anything to move, any sign that someone else was there. But nothing did. The house remained motionless. He walked toward the bathroom at the end of the hall. That was where the second thump came from. At least, that's what it sounded like. When he reached the door, it stood slightly open, a sliver of darkness inside. He pushed it slowly. The bathroom was empty. Just a quiet room with chipped tile, a dripping faucet, and the faint smell of old cleaning powder. He exhaled, and then the hallway light flickered behind him. He spun around fast, chest tightening, not from the light, but from the silhouette standing just beyond it. Tall, thin, head tilted the wrong way. Its outline froze in place like a picture torn out of a nightmare and pinned to the air. Jamal blinked. The silhouette vanished. The light buzzed softly and stayed steady. His breath came rough and shaky. He didn't trust his eyes anymore. Didn't trust the house. Didn't trust the night. He backed into the bathroom and closed the door, pressing his forehead against it. He wasn't sure how long he stood there, trying to convince himself he hadn't seen anything. Minutes, maybe more. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Not slow ones. Not cautious ones. Purposeful ones. Walking past the bathroom door. Jamal's blood ran cold. Someone was in his home. He didn't breathe. He didn't move. He just listened as the steps made their way toward his bedroom. When they stopped directly outside his door, a long silence stretched out, the kind that feels like it's tightening its fingers around your throat. Then came the sound that nearly broke him. A soft, dragging inhale. Someone breathing in the scent of his room. He didn't have his phone. He'd left it on his nightstand. The only thing he could do was wait and hope whoever, or whatever, was out there moved on. But the footsteps didn't move away. They walked back toward the hallway, then toward the bathroom. The doorknob shifted. A click. A slow turn. Jamal pressed his hand against the back of the door, bracing his weight against it even though it wouldn't help against someone determined enough. His throat felt tight. His heartbeat pounded so hard it echoed in his ears. The knob stilled for a moment, then began to turn again. This time even slower, like the person outside wanted him to hear every inch of metal shifting. Then the knob stopped. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. The shadow under the door disappeared. Jamal didn't move for minutes. When he finally opened the door, the hallway was empty again. He walked quietly back to his bedroom, expecting something to leap out of the darkness at any second. But nothing did. Inside his room, his phone sat on the nightstand where he left it. The screen was on. A notification blinked. Unknown number. One new message. His breath hitched. He opened it. One word. Home. Just that. No punctuation. No second message. And then another came through. I'm back. Jamal dropped the phone. He knew better than to call the police. They wouldn't believe him. Not without proof. Not without something real they could touch. And what was he supposed to say? That a whisper from an abandoned house followed him home. That someone walked past his room in a house where nobody else was awake. Nothing made sense. He turned the lock on his window, checked it twice, then sat on the edge of his bed, trying to think, trying to breathe. The street outside his window was silent. The kind of silence that made the darkness feel thicker. He could see the faint outline of the abandoned house down the block, even from here. It sat still, empty, lifeless. But something inside it wasn't lifeless at all. He lay back in bed, eyes open, unable to force himself to close them. The house seemed smaller, tighter, like the walls were leaning in. He waited for the night to pass. But the minutes stretched so slowly they almost hurt. He thought back to what Miss Alberta said. It's what's inside it. The one who came back. Jamal didn't know what that meant. Not yet. But he felt the truth of it somewhere deep in his bones. In the instinct every person is born with. The instinct that tells you when something wants you. And this thing wanted him. Badly. Outside, somewhere down the street, a faint humming began. Not loud. Not sharp. Just the soft, steady sound of someone who didn't sleep. Someone who wandered. Someone who waited. It drifted through the quiet, threading through the trees, slipping under the cracks of the night until it reached his window. Jamal squeezed his eyes shut as his chest tightened. Because even from inside his room, he knew the tune. It was the same rhythm as the footsteps he heard outside his door. It was the rhythm of someone coming back. By morning, Jamal looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were red around the edges, lids heavy, movements slow and tight. He walked through the kitchen like someone trying not to wake ghosts. His mom asked if he was okay, and he said he was fine. He wasn't. But explaining what he saw, what he heard, there weren't words for that kind of fear. Not one's adults believed anyway. He left for work earlier than usual, hoping daylight would clear his head. But daylight didn't do a damn thing. The walk down Boulder Park Drive felt different now, like something had settled in the air, something thick and watching. He kept his distance from the abandoned house, but even from across the street, he could feel its presence. It sat there like a rotting tooth, black and hollow, daring him to come closer. He didn't. He sped past, head down, hands buried in his pockets. It wasn't until he reached the end of the block that he heard it, a faint tapping sound behind him. He turned quickly. Nobody was there, just the house. Still, waiting. He shook his head and kept moving. At the warehouse, everything felt unnaturally bright. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, forklifts beeped and hummed, and workers shouted instructions across the floor. But Jamal felt pulled inward, thoughts drifting back to the night before like they had claws hooked into them. He tried focusing on his tasks, stacking pallets, labeling shipments, scanning inventory. But every clatter of metal, every shift of shadow, made him jump. He kept telling himself he was acting ridiculous. It was just exhaustion, stress. But no matter how much he tried to reason with himself, the memory of those footsteps in the hall wouldn't leave him alone. The sound of his doorknob turning, the breath on the other side. He needed answers, but he didn't know where to find them. During his break, he wandered outside, leaning against the brick wall of the loading dock. The sky was clear, painfully blue, with a few thin clouds drifting low and lazy. For a moment, the silence felt peaceful. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number again. He hesitated before unlocking it. No message this time. Just a missed call. The timestamp made his stomach twist. 2 minutes ago. He scanned the yard, eyes darting over cars, stacks of crates, the far end of the lot. He didn't know what he expected to see. A figure watching him, a shadow lurking behind a truck, but everything looked normal. Still, the unease tightened inside him like a fist. When his shift ended, the sun had already dipped low in the sky, painting the lot in long shadows. He thought about calling someone for a ride, a friend, a co-worker, anyone, but he didn't want to explain why. Didn't want him to think he was paranoid or losing it. So he walked. The evening breeze felt sharp, the kind that slips under your clothes and presses against your skin. He walked fast, eyes forward, trying not to look at the shadows growing around him. Cascade Road was busy, cars rushing past, people heading home. But the closer he got to Boulder Park Drive, the quieter everything became. It was like stepping out of a crowded room and into an empty hallway. The kind of shift you feel before you notice it. Jamal slowed down. Something was wrong. The street seemed too still. Houses that normally glowed with porch lights were dark. Even the stray cats that lingered near the dumpsters were gone. As he turned the corner, his breath caught. The abandoned house door, once boarded shut, was open just an inch. He froze. He knew for a fact that door was sealed. Everyone knew it. The boards hadn't moved in years. Kids threw rocks at them. Teenagers sprayed graffiti over them. They didn't budge. Ever. But now, the door hung slightly ajar, just enough to show a sliver of darkness inside. A chill washed over him. He stepped back, heart hammering. At that moment, the wind stopped. Completely. The trees stood still, their leaves frozen mid-sway. Even the hum of the city felt muted. Then something shifted behind the door. A shadow. Slow. Deliberate. Jamal took another step back, legs shaking. His throat tightened, and instinct pushed him to turn and run. But he couldn't move. Fear pinned him where he stood, fingers trembling at his sides. The shadow leaned closer to the opening, close enough for him to see. Not a face, not a figure, just a suggestion of a person. A tall outline with a bent neck and one shoulder raised higher than the other, like it had forgotten how a human body was supposed to stand. He blinked, and the shadow retreated. The door creaked as it closed. Not all the way, just until it sat still again, exactly as it had been before he arrived. Jamal staggered backward until he bumped into a mailbox. The metal rattled loudly, echoing through the empty street. He didn't wait. He ran. By the time he reached his house, he was gasping for breath. He fumbled with his keys, dropping them twice before pushing the door open and slipping inside. He locked it fast, deadbolt, chain, everything he could secure. He leaned against the door, chest heaving, sweat sliding down his back even though the house was cool. He thought he was safe. He wasn't. Inside the house, the air felt heavier than before. Quieter. He moved through the living room cautiously, checking the corners, the shadows, the windows. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The type of normal that hides something underneath. He walked into his bedroom and froze. His closet door, usually shut, was open by an inch. He stared at it for several long moments, unable to breathe. His body tensed, every muscle pulled tight. He reached for the doorknob. Then, a soft scratching sound drifted from inside the closet. He backed away slowly. The scratching stopped. Then, from deep inside the dark space, something whispered, "Still home." Jamal stumbled backward, hitting the edge of his bed. His legs shook so hard he dropped to the floor. He crawled backward, eyes locked on the closet door. The house seemed to breathe around him, the walls tightening, the air shrinking, the shadows swelling. The whisper didn't come again, but the silence that followed was worse, because it felt like whatever was inside the closet was smiling. Jamal didn't sleep. He didn't turn his back to the door. He didn't dare move closer. He sat on the floor until dawn came, pale and slow, leaking through the blinds. And even in the light, the closet door stayed slightly open, waiting. By the time the sun rose high enough to push real light into the room, Jamal's whole body felt numb. He didn't remember falling asleep, but at some point exhaustion must have dragged him under. He woke on the floor, leaning against the bed frame, neck stiff, mouth dry. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. His eyes were heavy, vision blurry, everything washed in the pale morning glow. Then he saw the closet door, still open, still waiting. A cold rush went through him, jolting him awake. He pushed himself up slowly, joints aching, gaze fixed on that dark gap. Nothing moved. No breathing. No scratching. No whisper. But he didn't trust the silence. He grabbed his backpack and clothes and changed in the bathroom instead, shutting the door and locking it even though it felt useless. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a throat closing around him. He didn't tell his mom anything. She had just come home from night shift, eyes swollen with exhaustion, shoes barely off her feet before she sat at the table with a bowl of cereal. He almost said something, but stopped. What'd he tell her? There's something in my closet. There's something inside that abandoned house. Something knows my name. She'd think he was losing it. Or worse, she'd worry. And Jamal couldn't do that to her. Not with everything she already carried. He left for work early again. The walk felt heavier today. The sky was cloudless, but the air carried a kind of weight that suggested rain, even when the forecast said otherwise. The wind moved slow, dragging warm air against his skin. He avoided the abandoned house completely, walking on the opposite sidewalk with his head turned away from it. But even without looking, he felt it, felt the pull of the place, felt the eyes pressed against the cracks in the boards. The house felt aware of him, like it was listening. He reached work without incident, but the day dragged worse than the last. Every noise made him flinch. Every shadow made him pause. He checked his phone too often, terrified of seeing another message, terrified of not seeing one. Around lunchtime, he felt it. A presence. Someone, or something, watching him from a distance. He turned slowly, pretending to stretch his back, scanning the far end of the warehouse. And there, partially hidden behind a stack of wooden pallets, he saw a shape that didn't belong. Tall, still, bent slightly forward, like it was listening for his next breath. He blinked hard, heart pounding. When he looked again, the shape was gone. He didn't finish his lunch. By evening, he felt like he had electricity crawling under his skin. Every instinct screamed at him not to walk home. Not today. Not after what happened in the closet. Not after what he thought he saw behind the pallets. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. He hovered over his cousin Malik's name, thumb trembling. Malik lived 15 minutes away, but calling him meant explaining things Jamal didn't want to explain. Jamal's family had a rule. Don't bring unnecessary fear into the house. Don't drag shadows where they don't belong. He put the phone away and started walking. Cascade Road bustled with life, but the closer he got to Boulder Park Drive, the thinner the world felt, like the city was peeling away from him one layer at a time. The noise softened, the traffic thinned, the air cooled, and then he reached the corner. He didn't want to look, but fear made him. The abandoned house stood quiet, dark, and wrong. Its boards sat crooked, like they'd been touched too many times. The grass around the porch looked flattened, trampled by footsteps that shouldn't exist. Something about the house felt awake, alive, and then Jamal saw it. Footprints, fresh ones, leading from the abandoned house straight across the street, straight toward his block, straight toward his house. His stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling. He didn't follow the prints. He didn't want to know how far they went. He didn't want to see them disappear under his window. He ran the last few blocks with his heartbeat throbbing in his ears, terror pulsing through him. When he reached home, he locked the door behind him the second he stepped inside. His mom wasn't home yet. The house was quiet, too quiet. He walked down the hallway, every step slow and heavy. He half expected the closet door to be open wider, expected something to be sitting there, waiting for him. But when he reached his bedroom, the door was shut. Not the closet, his bedroom door. He knew he had left it open. He pushed it gently. Inside, The curtains were drawn, even though he didn't remember closing them. Shadows pooled in the corners. The air felt wrong, stale, like someone had been sitting in the room too long without moving. The closet door was closed, completely closed. Jamal's breath caught. He stepped forward slowly, feeling the weight of the air thick around him. His legs trembled. His chest tightened. Every instinct screamed at him not to touch the closet, but he moved anyway. He reached for the doorknob. Cold, colder than it had any right to be. His fingers curled around it, shaking. He turned it slowly. Click. He opened the door. The closet was empty. Just clothes, shoes, and a few boxes stacked neatly in the back. But the cold remained. He stepped back quickly, heart hammering. Something was wrong. Something had changed. He felt it shift behind him. Slow, heavy, intentional. He turned. At first he didn't understand what he was seeing. Something stood in the corner of the room, half buried in shadow. A tall shape, bent forward, body unmoving. It leaned slightly to one side, shoulder hunched unnaturally. Then its head lifted. Not fast, not sharp, just a slow, heavy tilt. Its face stayed in darkness, but Jamal didn't need to see it to understand. This thing had been inside his room long before he opened the closet. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his backpack. He reached for the door, but the shape shifted suddenly, one long step forward, the sound of its foot hitting the floor, too soft, too controlled. Jamal froze. The creature, or man, or whatever it was, stood just inside the shadow. Its breathing sounded wrong, not like lungs taking in air, but like the room exhaling through a hole in the wall. Then it whispered, "Don't leave." Jamal's hand scrambled for the doorknob. He yanked the door open and sprinted out, slamming it behind him. He ran down the hallway, so fast his socks slipped on the floor, almost making him fall. He didn't stop until he was outside, gasping for air on the porch, knees threatening to collapse beneath him. He looked back at the house. The curtains in his bedroom moved slightly, like someone had just let go of them. A chill went through him. He couldn't go back inside. Not alone. Not tonight. Some people hear about a thing stepping out of the shadows like that and still brush it off like superstition. Those are the ones who learn too late that danger doesn't knock, it enters. If you don't want your own room to feel as watched as Jamal's did, subscribe before night finds space to move. And if you choose to stay unsubscribed, step into the comments and explain why you'd leave your door open to the dark. Some stories don't begin with darkness. They begin with noise, too much of it, so loud it hides the danger underneath. That was the case in East Point, where Keisha lived. Her street was the type that always felt busy, even when it was calm. Kids played outside past sunset. Older folks argued across porches. Music thumped from speakers like it was part of the air itself. Noise meant life. Noise meant safety. But sometimes, noise is the perfect cover for something trying to slip through unnoticed. Keisha was 22, sharp-tongued and stubborn, someone who didn't scare easy. She worked at a small salon on Cleveland Avenue, doing braids, twists, and retwists for half the neighborhood. Everyone knew her, and she liked it that way. Her world was small, familiar, predictable. Nothing strange ever happened on her block. Until the night, something whispered through it. It started with a cat. Keisha stepped out of her house just after 9, trash bag in hand, wearing slippers and a bonnet. The street was alive with its usual energy. Kids racing bikes, someone grilling 2 houses down, neighbors playing dominoes at a folding table. She headed for the bin near the sidewalk and was halfway there when the stray cat that always hung around her porch darted out from under a car. But it didn't just run. It sprinted so hard it skidded across the concrete, claws scraping like it wanted to escape something that wasn't visible. The cat bolted across the yard, eyes wide, tail puffed, and vanished behind the fence. Keisha frowned and muttered, "Damn, what scared you like that?" Then she froze. A sound drifted across the street. Not a voice, not a step, Something softer. A whisper. It didn't say anything she could understand. It wasn't aimed at her. It wasn't even loud enough to catch fully. But it held a shape, like the breath of a person speaking too close to your ear from a place they shouldn't be. Keisha stood still, trash bag hanging loosely from her hand. Her eyes scanned the street. Kids kept playing. Adult kept laughing. The grill smoke drifted lazily. Nothing seemed wrong, but she couldn't shake the feeling of something watching her. She tossed the trash, shook herself free of the moment, and went back inside. But the whisper came again the next night, and the night after that, always around the same time, always from the same direction, down the far end of the block, near the house that had been empty since the family moved away years ago. That house wasn't like the one Jamal dealt with. It wasn't abandoned or broken. It was clean, still cared for, blinds always drawn neat and straight. But no one lived there. Or at least, no one who should have been there. Keisha didn't pay much attention at first. Neighborhoods breathe. They make sounds. Houses settle. Wind plays tricks. But after the fifth night, she noticed something strange. Every time she heard the whisper, the street grew quiet. Not completely. Not all at once. But the noise dipped. Kids stopped laughing. Music slipped low. Even the breeze shifted. It happened so gradually that nobody else seemed to notice. But Keisha did. She felt it like a hand brushing across the back of her neck. She didn't like it. One evening, she asked her neighbor Miss Brenda about the empty house. "You know who bought that place after the Jacksons left?" she asked. Miss Brenda paused mid-sweep, leaning on the broom handle. Nobody did. Then why's the porch so clean? Why the lawn cut? Miss Brenda shook her head. City keeps it tidy so it don't bring the property value down. Keisha frowned. So nobody's been in there? No, baby. Place has been locked up for 4 years. Why? Keisha didn't answer. She didn't want to sound paranoid. But that night, she watched the house from her window. Just before 9:15, the whisper came again. But this time, she heard it clearly. Not words. Not sentences. Just her name. Soft. Slow. Dragging. Keisha. Her heart dropped into her stomach. She stepped back from the window instinctively, eyes locked on the house across the street. Nothing moved. No lights. No figures. Just the sound, like someone standing right under her window. She didn't sleep that night. She kept hearing it. Once at 1:20 a.m., again at 3:02. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt like someone was leaning over her bed, waiting for her to drift off. She kept her lamp on until the sun came up. The next morning, she tried convincing herself it was stress, exhaustion, the weight of too many clients and too little rest. But when she left for work, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Footprints, bare ones, leading from the sidewalk straight to her bedroom window. She swallowed hard. Her stomach tightened. She watched the ground closely, tracing the prints backward. They led to her yard, then across the street, then to the empty house. She walked slowly toward the spot where the prints stopped. They ended right at the base of the front steps, as if someone stood there, watching. She went to work, but her mind wasn't on braids or ret wists. It stayed stuck on those footprints, on the whisper, on the fact that her name sounded wrong in that voice, too stretched, too smooth, like the breath of someone who didn't have lungs. By the time she got home, night was crawling in fast. She sat on her porch, arms folded tightly across her chest. Kids rode bikes up and down the street. Someone grilled again. The air smelled like charcoal and barbecue sauce. Everything felt normal. Then it happened. At 9:14, the street fell quiet. Not slowly, not gradually, all at once. Dominoes stopped clacking. Grills went silent. Kids froze where they stood. Even the wind died. Keisha stood. Her breath caught. A whisper slid across the pavement. Keisha. She turned toward the empty house. The blinds in the front window parted. Not fast. Not sudden. Just enough for someone inside to peek through. Her throat tightened, and something cold crawled up her spine. The blinds closed again. That was all it took. She ran into her house and locked every door and window. She stayed in the living room, lights on, phone in hand. She couldn't stop shaking. Hours passed. The house stayed silent except for her breathing. At 3:08 a.m., the whisper came again, right outside her window. This time it wasn't soft. It was close. Too close. Kaisha. Her whole body went cold. The whispering didn't sound human anymore. It had an echo to it, like two voices whispering the same sound with a slight delay, like something copying a voice it heard once and trying to recreate it. She backed away from the window, holding her phone to her chest. She didn't dare look outside. Then, her front door handle moved. Just a small, slow turn. Once. Twice. The metal clicked softly. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. The handle stilled. Then a fingernail tapped the door. Once. Twice. Then again. And a whisper breathed through the crack around the frame. "Let me in." Keisha stumbled backward until she hit the couch. The tapping stopped. The whisper faded. But the feeling stayed. Whatever was outside wasn't going away. Keisha didn't open the front door. Not that night. Not after the tapping. Not after the voice. She sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket like armor, one leg pulled tight to her chest, the other shaking against the floor. Every few minutes, she heard movement outside. Soft steps, slow drags, the kind of sound someone makes when they want you to hear them, but not see them. She kept the lights on until sunrise. But the whisper walker didn't leave. Not really. At 9 the next morning, she peeked outside. Her porch looked normal. Her trash can sat where she left it. But the sidewalk told a different story. Dusty streaks dragged across the concrete, as if someone had been pacing there for hours. And in the middle of her walkway, she found something that made her step back into the house so fast she almost tripped. A footprint. Bare. Human. Slightly larger than a man's average size. And it pointed toward her door. She locked the deadbolt a second time, even though it didn't help. She called her cousin Brittany to come over. Brittany laughed at first, said Keisha was just tired, said too many horror movies had her on edge. But the second she saw the footprint outside, her laugh died. "What kind of dude walks around barefoot at night?" Brittany whispered. Keisha didn't answer. She didn't know how. Brittany insisted on sleeping over, just in case. They spent most of the day together in the living room, watching old sitcoms with the volume too loud. It kept their nerves in check. When night crept in again, the world outside changed the way it had before. Too quiet, too sudden. The whisper walker's time. At 9:14 p.m. on the dot, the street fell silent. Keisha turned off the TV. Brittany sat up straighter. Then they heard it. A long exhale. Close to the house. Too close. "Did you hear that?" Brittany whispered. Keisha didn't answer. She knew the pattern now. First came the breath. Then the whisper. Then the footsteps. The couch fabric tightened under Brittany's grip as a soft voice drifted through the window. "Kaisha." Brittany slapped her hand over her mouth to stop herself from screaming. The whisper came again. But this time, it was followed by something new. A second whisper, behind the first one, repeating it a half-second later, like an echo from a mouth that wasn't shaped right. "Kaisha. Ishaya." Keisha's skin pricked with terror. That wasn't human. That wasn't anything living. That was something trying to learn, trying to mimic, trying to do it right. They crawled into her bedroom and shut the door quietly, as if making noise would attract attention. Brittany pressed her ear to the wall. "Something's outside," she whispered. Keisha shook her head. "No, it's closer." A shadow passed across her window. The two women froze. The curtains shifted slightly, moving inward. Not from wind, there was no wind, but from breath. Something pressed its face against the window from the outside. They didn't dare get closer to look. They didn't dare speak. They just stood there, bodies shaking, as the shadow behind the curtains stretched long across the floor. Then came tapping. Not on the door this time. On the window glass. Tap, tap, tap. Slow and patient. Brittany grabbed Keisha's wrist, so hard her nails dug in. The tapping stopped. Then the whisper moved, not outside the window anymore, but along the wall, sliding toward the bedroom door like a hand dragging across the siding. Something circled the house. Slow, intentional, listening. Keisha heard the porch creak, then the second step, then the third. The whisper walker was on her front porch again. Brittany started crying, breath shaking. Keisha covered her mouth gently to muffle the sound. She didn't know if the thing outside reacted to noise. She didn't know how it heard or what senses it had. But she wasn't going to test anything. The whisper walker knocked on the front door. One single knock. Firm, slow, meaningful. Then it spoke, not whispering, not mimicking, just one word that sounded like it came from deep inside something hollow. Open. Keisha shook her head violently in the dark, even though the thing couldn't see her. No, she wasn't opening anything. She wasn't moving. She wasn't breathing louder than she had to. The creature's shadow lingered on the porch for a long time, so long that they thought it had left. But when the knock came again, it came from the side door, then from the back door, like it was testing every point of entry, learning the structure of her house. They stayed in her bedroom for nearly 3 hours before the sound stopped. When morning came, they checked the porch and found something worse than footprints. A feather, long, thin, almost translucent. It wasn't from a bird. It was too smooth, too straight, too clean, like something had shed it, or dropped it, or placed it deliberately. Keisha tried to throw it away, but the moment she touched it, she felt a cold pulse move through her fingers, up her wrist, and into her chest. She dropped it immediately. They didn't sleep at all the next day. Brittany refused to leave her alone until the sun came up for the second time. But even then, she kept checking the windows every few minutes like she expected something to be staring back. When Brittany finally drove home, Keisha sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the feather where it lay on the porch through the window. She shouldn't have touched it. She felt wrong, cold under her skin, like someone had left a breath inside her veins. And then her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. Just one sentence. Why hide? Keisha dropped the phone. No one had her number except family and friends. And the whisper walker didn't talk through phones. Until now. She backed away from the window, hand pressed to her chest. Her breathing shook with each inhale. She picked up the phone slowly, praying she'd imagined it. Another message came through. I see you. Her vision blurred with fear. And then, a shadow stretched across her floor. Not from the window, not from the hallway light, from inside the room, from the corner behind the closet door. Keisha froze, eyes widening as the shadow lengthened, carrying the outline of a human body. Too thin, too tall, neck crooked at an angle that defied bone. The whisper walker was inside. She pressed against the wall, sliding sideways until she was near the bedroom door. Her hand fumbled for the knob, shaking so badly she could barely grip it. The shadow bent, slow, tilting, listening. Then the whisper crawled up her spine. Keisha. She burst into the hallway and slammed the door behind her. She didn't stop running. Not when she reached the living room. Not when she reached the porch. Not even when she was barefoot on the pavement. She kept going until she reached the streetlight at the corner, her breath ripping from her lungs. Behind her, the house sat still. But the whisper followed. Low, dragging, closer than it should have been. Keisha. She didn't look back. She ran. And the whisper walker followed the sound of her heartbeat. Some people hear about a thing slipping into a room like that, silent, patient, already learning their name, and still think they're safe because their lights are on. Those are the people the whisper walker follows first. If you wanted to pass your home without listening at your windows, subscribe before the next night falls. And if you choose not to, then step into the comments and explain why you'd ignore a whisper calling your name. Some evil doesn't announce itself. It doesn't whisper. It doesn't chase. It doesn't knock. Some evil just waits, quiet, patient, buried inside the walls of a life that looks normal on the outside. That was the kind of evil that found Aaliyah. Aaliyah lived in Decatur, not far from Convenient Highway, in a neighborhood where people still waved at each other and kids rode scooters down sidewalks without fear. Her family was tight. Sunday dinners, birthday cookouts, crowded living rooms with laughter that spilled into the street. The house her mother grew up in had been passed down through generations. It held memories, stories, secrets too old to question. Nobody ever thought the danger would come from inside it. Aaliyah was 20, soft-spoken, smart, always polite. She didn't curse, didn't fight, didn't argue with anybody. She had the kind of gentle presence that made people protect her without thinking. But she also had nightmares. One she never talked about. One she'd had since she was a child. Dreams about standing in a dark hallway while someone breathed behind the walls. She told her mom about them once. "Baby, it's just your imagination," her mother said gently. "Old houses make sounds." But the sounds Aaliyah heard weren't creaks. Not taps. Not footsteps settling on wood. The sound she heard whispered. And sometimes they called her name. The dreams always started the same way. A hallway stretching long and narrow, lined with closed doors. She'd walk past the first one, and the handle would twitch. Then the second door, its hinges would creak like something inside leaned against it. By the third door, her heart would be pounding. She'd always stop there, and the whisper would slide through the crack beneath it. "Aaliyah." That's when she woke up, sweating, shaking, breath caught like someone had been holding her underwater. She'd had that same dream twice a month for years. But one night, the dream changed. She stood in the same hallway, same darkness, same cold. But this time, the first door wasn't closed. It was open. She froze in the dream, unable to breathe. The open doorway showed nothing but a black square that swallowed all the light. She didn't want to step toward it, but her feet moved on their own, dragging her closer. When she reached the threshold, something stepped back inside the dark, retreating just out of sight. Not afraid, playful, as if it were saying, "Come find me." She jerked awake with a scream. Her mother rushed into the room, flipping on the light, pulling Aaliyah into her arms. She rocked her, whispering comfort, brushing tears from her cheeks. Aaliyah shook for a long time before she found her voice. "The door was open," she whispered. Her mother stiffened. For a moment too quick to catch fully, her face showed something Aaliyah didn't recognize. Fear, but not fear of the dream. Fear of recognition. "Aaliyah," she said carefully, "did you step inside?" "No," Aaliyah whispered. But something did. Her mother hugged her tighter, but her eyes softened in a way that looked like sorrow or guilt. And that's when Aaliyah realized something she never wanted to think about. Her mother knew more than she ever said. The next morning, Aaliyah found a small object on the floor near her door. A wooden bead. Old, dark, smooth by time, and carved with a symbol she didn't recognize. She took it to her mom. Her mother stiffened again, jaw tightening. She snatched the bead out of Aaliyah's hand so fast it startled her. "Don't pick up anything you didn't drop," her mother said, voice sharp. "But I found it. I said don't touch it." Her mother threw the bead into the kitchen drawer and slammed it shut. That was the first time Aaliyah felt afraid of her own house. That night, she woke at 2:43 a.m., not from a dream, not from a noise, from a smell. A strange, earthy scent, old wood and damp soil. It coated the air, thick and heavy, like someone had opened a cellar door that had been shut for decades. She sat up slowly. Her bedroom door was open. Aaliyah never slept with it open. She slid out of bed, feet touching the cold floorboards. The house was dark except for the faint glow from the streetlight sneaking through the curtains. The hallway stretched in front of her. She froze. 3 doors lined the hall, just like her dream. And the first door, the one to the old linen closet, stood open. Aaliyah's throat tightened. Her body turned cold all over. She stared at the open doorway, waiting for movement, waiting for something to breathe. But nothing happened. She forced herself to step closer. Her heartbeat thrummed hard, each thump shaking through her ribs. She reached the doorway and peeked inside. Nothing but towels and blankets, stacked neatly. She exhaled shakily. Then she saw them. Footprints. Not dirt. Not water. Dust. Thick, gray dust that coated the back of the closet floor. Foot-shaped patches where dust had been cleared by something stepping out. Human footprints. Bare. Leading out of the closet. Into the hallway. Straight toward her room. She backed up so fast she hit the wall behind her. Her breath caught. Eyes wide, chest tight. Her hands trembled violently. She looked again. The footprints stopped where she had been sleeping. Something had stood beside her bed, watching. The house creaked softly, one slow groan from deep inside the walls, like the house itself was breathing. Her mother's voice floated faintly from her bedroom at the end of the hall. Not calling her, not waking, humming. A slow, sad melody Aaliyah had heard since she was little. A song her grandmother used to hum. A tune passed down for generations. A lullaby meant to keep something asleep. But it wasn't working anymore. Aaliyah walked shakily to her mother's door and pushed it open. Her mother was sitting on the edge of her bed, hands clasped tightly, eyes closed, humming with a trembling voice. "Mom," Aaliyah whispered. Her mother's eyes snapped open. She looked terrified. "You saw it," she said, voice breaking. Aaliyah nodded. Her mother swallowed hard, hands shaking. "I prayed it would skip your generation." "What is it?" Aaliyah whispered. Her mother hesitated. Then she said the words that would change everything. "It's ours." Aaliyah stared at her. "What?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "It follows the bloodline. Always has. It chooses one of us every generation. And once it chooses, it doesn't stop." Aaliyah's stomach dropped. "Stop what?" Her mother looked away. Watching, she whispered. Aaliyah stepped back as terror rooted in her chest. "Mom, what is it?" she pleaded. Her mother finally met her eyes. "The quiet one," she whispered. "The one born from this house. The one our family trapped long before either of us were alive. We thought the rituals kept it asleep. But if you saw footprints..." Her voice cracked. "Then it woke for you." Aaliyah felt lightheaded. Her vision blurred for a moment. The house suddenly felt smaller, tighter, colder. "It's in the walls," her mother continued softly. "It listens. It learns. It waits. And once it chooses someone, it follows them everywhere." Aaliyah shook her head, backing away. "No, no, this can't be real. Mom, this can't." The hallway light flickered. Her mother froze. So did Aaliyah. Something shifted in the wall. Not a mouse. Not pipes. Not settling wood. A slow, crawling movement, like fingers dragging along the inside of the plaster. They stood completely still. The house groaned again, long, deep, familiar. Aaliyah had heard that sound every night of her childhood. It wasn't the house settling. It was breathing. Aaliyah stood frozen in the hallway, her breath barely moving in and out. The walls around her felt wrong, too alive, too aware. Her mother's words circled like cold fingers around her spine. "It follows the bloodline. It chose you." It woke. A faint scrape slid down the wall beside them. Not sharp, not soft. A dragging sound, slow enough to feel intentional. Aaliyah's mother grabbed her wrist and pulled her into the bedroom, closing the door quietly behind them. She locked the knob, then pushed a heavy dresser against it with trembling hands. The wood squeaked across the floor. "Mom," Aaliyah whispered. Her mother pressed a finger to her lips. "Chill." The scraping stopped. Silence settled like dust. For several seconds, neither of them breathed. Then the sound started again, this time on the other side of the door. A soft tap against the wood, almost gentle, like a knuckle testing its way through memory. Not knocking, not asking to be let in, just a reminder. "I'm here." Aaliyah pressed her back against the wall, her heartbeat thudding into it. Her mother stood perfectly still, hands folded over her mouth, eyes closed as if praying silently. The tapping stopped. Then, a whisper pressed through the wood. Not spoken aloud, not breathed, more like a vibration threaded through the wall itself. A53. A sound so quiet she almost missed it. A sound so familiar it made her knees weaken. Her childhood nightmares had never been dreams. They were warnings. Her mother's voice broke the silence. Barely audible. Shaking. I need you to listen to me. Don't cry. Don't scream. It listens for that. Aaliyah swallowed hard, her voice cracking. Mom, what is it? Her mother looked at the wall, as if the answer lived behind the plaster. Something our great-grandmother trapped. Something this house raised like child. Her voice lowered even further. It was never supposed to wake for you. You're too young. You weren't supposed to hear it yet. Aaliyah stared at her, confusion and terror swirling together. Hear it? When should I have? Her mother shut her eyes. It used to choose someone at 30. Always at 30. Your aunt, your grandmother, the ones before them, 30. Why me? Aaliyah begged. Her mother opened her eyes slowly. Because you looked at it. Aaliyah froze. I never saw anything. You opened the door in the dream, her mother whispered. That's all it needs. One look, one breath, one moment where you acknowledge the dark, and the dark acknowledges you back. A loud crack split through the wall behind them, making both women jump. The ceiling light flickered once, then dimmed to a dull, amber glow. The house exhaled. Aaliyah felt the breath ripple across the floorboards. Her mother grabbed her hand tightly. We can't stay in here. How do we leave? Aaliyah whispered. There's an old ritual, her mother said, voice shaking badly. My grandmother told me. I never wanted to use it. It's meant to send it back into the walls, to put it back to sleep. Does it work? Her mother hesitated. Sometimes. Another crack. Louder. Closer. Aaliyah's breath trembled. What do we have to do? We go to the hallway, her mother whispered, and we don't look at anything that moves. Aaliyah shook her head. What? No. We don't look, her mother repeated, voice sharp this time. It mimics faces. It mimics shadows. If you look at any part of it, it learns you deeper. It learns how to follow. Aaliyah felt faint. Her mother moved the dresser away from the door quietly. Every sound felt amplified. Her mother's breath, the groan of the wood, the soft vibration of something waiting. She unlocked the door. The hallway outside was dark. Still. Empty. But the air was wrong. Thick. Humid. Like breath that had nowhere else to go. Her mother began whispering something under her breath. A song. Or maybe a prayer. The same lullaby she hummed at night. The same one Aaliyah now realized wasn't for comfort. It was a warning to the walls. They stepped out into the hallway. The shadows leaned long across the floor, stretching toward them like fingers. The air felt colder near the linen closet. The door hung open. Dust footprints trailed out, stopping right where Aaliyah had been sleeping the night before. Her mother squeezed her hand. Don't stop walking. They took 3 slow steps. The walls trembled. Something moved behind them. Aaliyah closed her eyes tightly. She didn't want to know what it looked like. She didn't want to hear it. But the house made sure she did. A second set of footsteps echoed their own, dragging. Soft. Wet like skin pulling across wood. A53. Her name slithered through the air like smoke. Her mother didn't break stride. Don't turn around, she whispered urgently. I can feel it behind me. Don't turn around. Something touched the back of Aaliyah's neck. Cold. Gentle. Aaliyah gasped and almost spun around, but her mother grabbed her chin quickly, forcing her forward. Straight ahead, she hissed. If you look, it binds to your eyes. Aaliyah nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. They reached the living room. The front door was 4 steps away. Her mother tightened her grip. Run. They sprinted. The house roared. A guttural, scraping sound filled the air, like the walls themselves were screaming. The footsteps behind them sped up, chasing, gaining ground. Aaliyah reached the door. Her mother shoved it open. Cold night air hit them like a wave of freedom. Aaliyah stumbled onto the porch, nearly falling. Her mother slammed the door shut behind them, breath shattering in her chest. The house shook violently once, then went silent. They ran to the middle of the yard, both trembling in the cold. Aaliyah felt the night pressing around them, but at least out here, the air didn't feel alive. Her mother grabbed her face gently, eyes wet. "We buy time tonight. Only tonight. It'll come again." Aaliyah stared at the house. The windows were dark. Still. Too still. "What does it want?" she whispered. Her mother looked at her, with a breaking kind of sorrow. "You." Aaliyah's breath left her body. It wasn't done, and it wasn't going back to sleep. Some people hear a story about something waking in the walls, and still tell themselves their own house is different. Those are the ones it chooses first, because denial is an open door. If you want your own walls to stay quiet tonight, subscribe before the silence shifts. And if you refuse, then go to the comments and explain why you'd risk being chosen next. Some people think fear is something you can outrun. That if you move fast enough, leave your block, leave your city, leave the shadows that once scared you, the fear stays behind. But fear doesn't stay. Not when the thing that caused it remembers you. Jamal learned that the hard way when he moved to Lithonia. Keisha learned of the night she ran down East Point sidewalk and realized the Whisper Walker didn't need doors to follow her. And now, Aaliyah was learning it on the front lawn of the house her bloodline had fed for generations. 3 different people, 3 different killers, 3 different rules broken. One night, where everything began to converge. Aaliyah's mother held her shoulders, grounding her breath. "We have to leave. Now. But where do we go?" Aaliyah whispered, trembling. "Anywhere it can't touch you." But her mother's voice cracked, like she didn't believe her own words. A crack echoed from inside the house again. A deeper one this time, like the house was splitting from the inside. Aaliyah stepped back instinctively. Her eyes never left the windows. Her mother grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the driveway. They reached the car. Her mother fumbled with the keys, hands shaking too violently to aim. The keys dropped into the grass. Aaliyah bent to grab them, and froze. A shadow stretched out from the porch steps. Long, thin, dragging across the ground toward her feet. "Mom," she whispered. Her mother looked up, saw the shadow, and pushed Aaliyah behind her. The porch boards creaked. Slowly, one step at a time, something descended those steps with deliberate care, as though enjoying the pace. The hallway inside groaned. The walls shivered. Whatever belonged to that bloodline was waking fully. Her mother finally managed to unlock the car. She shoved Aaliyah inside and ran around to the other side. They sped off the driveway as the shadow stretched across the lawn behind them, pulling itself closer to the street. The entire neighborhood stayed dark and still. Houses lined up like they were holding their breath. Aaliyah didn't look back, but she felt the weight behind them, felt the pressure of eyes that had once watched her sleep. Her mother drove fast, faster than she ever had, down Covington Highway, hands clenched so tight her knuckles whitened. The tires hummed loudly, the engine shaking. Aaliyah stared out the window, trying to calm her breath, but she saw something that made the air leave her lungs. A man stood on the sidewalk, too tall, shoulders crooked, neck tilted, watching their car pass. Jamal's killer, the returner. Her heart seized. He wasn't even from her story. He wasn't from her house. He wasn't supposed to know her at all, but he watched her like he did, like he recognized something in her, like he could hear her fear. Aaliyah jerked away from the window with a gasp. Her mother didn't notice. Her eyes stayed locked on the road. The returner slowly turned his head as their car sped by, tracking them with unnatural precision. Aaliyah squeezed her eyes shut, but his image clung to her mind like a stain. She didn't know his story. She didn't know his rules. But she knew one thing. He didn't belong on that street. He was crossing boundaries he had never crossed before. Her mother kept driving, turning into a gas station parking lot several miles away. The lights were bright, buzzing overhead, promising safety they couldn't deliver. Her mother leaned back in the seat, chest heaving with exhaustion. "Just breathe," she whispered. "We're okay for a moment." Aaliyah didn't feel okay. Something felt off. She looked around. No one else was at the station. Not a single car. Not a single person. The lights above her flickered once. Then again. Her mother stiffened. "Aaliyah, don't look outside," she whispered. "Why? What's?" "Aaliyah, don't." But Aaliyah was already turning her head, and what she saw standing under the far pump froze her blood in her veins. A woman, but not a normal one. Her body was thin, too thin. Her hair hung long, almost touching the concrete. Her head was tilted sideways, listening. Her feet were bare, and around her, the air shimmered slightly, like heat waves rising off asphalt. The whisper walker. Only now it wasn't whispering. It was breathing. Slow. Heavy. Too close. Aaliyah grabbed her mother's arm. "It followed me, Mom. It followed me." "No," her mother whispered. "That thing doesn't follow strangers. It tracks people tied to it. But I'm not tied to it." Aaliyah cried. Her mother didn't answer. Because she didn't need to. Aaliyah understood. She wasn't just chosen by the Quiet Bloodline. She was chosen by something else too. Something that didn't belong to her family. Something that had found her because she looked back at it. A soft tapping sound hit the car window. Aaliyah whipped her head left. Nothing. Just the glass. Just the dark. Tap. The sound came again. On the other side. Tap. Her breathing quickened. Her pulse hammered. "Mom," she whispered. "It's on both sides." Her mother turned the key. The engine didn't start. She tried again. Nothing. Aaliyah's heartbeat climbed into her throat. Tap. 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 This time from the windshield. Slow. Rhythmic. Almost curious. Her mother slammed her hand on the wheel. "Come on. Come on." The lights in the gas station flickered violently. The air thickened. And then, a shadow slid across the hood of the car. Long. Crooked. The returner stepped into the light. Aaliyah screamed. Her mother didn't dare move. The returner placed one hand on the windshield. Long fingers. Dirty nails. Skin stretched wrong. He leaned forward slowly, pressing his face near the glass. But he wasn't looking at the mother. He was looking at Aaliyah. She felt his stare like frost in her bones. He knew her now. All three of them did. The returner, the whisper walker, and the quiet one in the walls of her family home. 3 killers. 3 rules broken. 3 shadows converging on a girl who never asked to be chosen. Her mother grabbed her hand tightly. "Don't blink," she whispered. "Don't breathe loud. And whatever you do, don't look away." The returner's hand dragged slowly down the windshield, leaving a long smear of moisture across the glass. Aaliyah felt every inch of that movement in her spine. It wasn't human. Nothing about him felt human. His fingers didn't bend right. His joints cracked in slow motion, like something wearing a body it borrowed from a grave. Her mother squeezed her hand so tightly Aaliyah's fingers tingled. "Aaliyah," she whispered, barely audible, "don't blink." Inside the car, time folded. Outside the car, death waited. Behind the car, something breathed. And to the left, Aaliyah didn't have to look to know the whisper walker had moved closer. The night had grown too quiet, too expectant, as if everything around them, the pavement, the street lights, the empty gas pumps, was holding its breath for the moment everything broke. The returner leaned to the side slowly, like he was studying Aaliyah from a new angle. His head tilted with a sickening crack. He pressed his ear to the windshield as if listening to her heartbeat. It wasn't curiosity. It was recognition, as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Her mother whispered, "We have to leave the car." Aaliyah stared at her. "What? Leave now?" Her mother nodded slowly. "The car won't start, and staying inside is worse." As if on cue, the whisper walker stepped closer. Its bare feet made no sound on the concrete. Its head twitched softly, listening to something Aaliyah couldn't hear. something inside her. Aaliyah's mother took a deep breath. When I say go, you run. You don't stop. You don't look back. Even if you hear me fall. Even if something grabs me. You run. Aaliyah shook her head wildly, tears spilling down. No, I can't. Her mother turned to her, eyes fierce and wet. Baby, listen to me. One of us has to survive tonight. If it's you, it'll be enough. The returner's palm flattened against the windshield. Crack. A hairline fracture split across the glass like lightning. Aaliyah gasped. The whisper walker's breath fogged the back window. Then, a deep vibration hummed beneath the car, rising through the floorboards, rattling their bones. Aaliyah knew that sound. She had grown up with it. It wasn't the whisper walker. It wasn't the returner. The third thing had arrived. The quiet one. The house's child. The bloodline's curse. The thing that knew her name before she was born. The asphalt under the car trembled lightly, as if something was moving beneath it, coming closer. Her mother swallowed hard. On three, the returner raised his fist. 1. The whisper walker leaned in, ear pressed against the rear glass. 2. The ground pulsed under them. 3. Her mother shoved the door open and yanked Aaliyah out with her. The returner slammed his fist into the windshield, shattering it completely. As they ran, Aaliyah stumbled onto the concrete, legs shaking, lungs burning. Her mother pulled her toward the back of the gas station, away from the lights, away from the killers that moved with unnatural grace. The returner climbed through the windshield, dragging his crooked frame through broken glass without reacting to the cuts. His long limbs moved like ropes pulled by invisible hands. The whisper walker glided silently after them, head still tilted, hair dangling like wet vines. And beneath it all, the pavement rippled a second time, small at first, then stronger. The quiet one was following. Aaliyah and her mother sprinted behind the store into the darkness. The air here was colder, the shadows heavier. Aaliyah's feet slapped the ground too loudly. Every sound felt like a beacon calling the monsters closer. Her mother stopped suddenly. Aaliyah crashed into her. Mom, why did you? Her mother pointed. A chain-link fence blocked their path. 8 feet high. Rusted. Unbroken. No, Aaliyah choked. Her mother pushed her toward it. Climb. What about you? Climb. The urgency in her voice left no room for argument. Aaliyah grabbed the fence and pulled herself up. Her fingers slipped once, twice. Sweat made her palms slick. Her hands trembled violently. But she kept climbing. Halfway up, she heard it. A footstep. Slow. Heavy. Close. Her mother spun around, body shaking, eyes wide. Something emerged from the darkness behind the building. Not the returner. Not the whisper walker. Something lower. Something crawling. Something that dragged its body like it wasn't used to having one. The quiet one. Aaliyah froze on the fence, breath gone. The thing pulled itself forward, bones shifting under skin that didn't fit right. Its fingers clawed at the pavement. Its head turned toward Aaliyah in a slow rotation, like an owl listening for prey. Her mother whispered, "Don't look at it. Keep climbing." Aaliyah turned away and climbed faster. Her mother stepped back, placing herself between Aaliyah and the creature. The returner rounded the corner. The whisper walker glided behind him. 3 nightmares. 3 broken rules. 3 killers that should have never crossed paths. But now they all stood together, focused on one girl. Aaliyah reached the top of the fence, gripping the metal tight. "Mom," she screamed. "Climb. Climb with me." Her mother smiled sadly. Someone has to hold them back. Aaliyah's throat closed. "No, no, no, please." Her mother stepped forward, planting her feet firmly. The returner tilted his head. The whisper walker listened. The quiet one crawled closer. Her mother whispered, "Run, baby." Aaliyah sobbed. Her mother whispered a final prayer, and then the killers moved. Aaliyah jumped from the top of the fence, hit the ground hard on the other side, pain shooting through her ankle. She tried to get up, but she froze. She heard her mother scream, a short one, cut off quickly. Then silence. Aaliyah forced herself to run. She didn't look back. She didn't breathe right. Her vision blurred. Her heart hammered wildly. She ran into the night until the gas station lights vanished behind her. But she knew the truth. Running didn't matter. The killers didn't choose her mother. They chose her. 3 different rules. 3 different stories. 3 different killers. But all of them wanted the same thing now. Aaliyah. And no matter where she ran, some things don't stop. Some things know your name forever. Some things follow until you break. And some things, the worst things, never stopped watching her from the moment she opened the wrong door. Some people hear a story like this and tell themselves nothing like that could ever follow them. But killers don't choose victims by chance. They choose the ones who think they're safe. If you want distance between you and anything that knows your name when it shouldn't, subscribe before tonight turns quiet. And if you refuse, step into the comments and explain why you'd rather gamble with the dark instead. Some stories end when the killer is caught. Some end when the sun rises. Some end when the victim finds a way out. But not these. The returner is still walking the streets he died on, taking back every soul he thinks owes him one. The whisper walker is still listening, waiting for the next person who forgets to keep their eyes open. And the quiet one, it never needed streets. It never needed doors. It only needed a name. And now it has yours. Because the truth you don't want to hear is this. Nothing in these stories is finished. Not the killings. Not the rules they broke. Not the people who crossed their path. Somewhere tonight, in a house that looks normal, in a shadow that shouldn't move, in a silence that holds its breath too long, one of them is waking again. One of them is choosing. One of them is listening to the sound of your heartbeat from the other side of the screen. Most people will pretend they're safe. Most will pretend these stories are just stories. Most will walk into a dark room tonight and tell themselves nothing is waiting in it. And maybe they're right. Maybe nothing followed them. Maybe nothing learned their face. Maybe nothing whispered their name the moment they blinked. But if the room feels different when you turn off the light, if your walls settle in a way they never have before, if the silence feels heavier than usual, you'll know why. You listened, and now something is listening back. So whatever you do next, don't check the window, don't look down the hall, and don't let the quiet get too close. Because some killers stop following only after the screen goes dark, and yours might be waiting for that moment right now.